Well, an exciting announcement coming out of the LSU athletic department today. What is it? What does it mean for LSU? What's the good? What's the bad? And what are some questions that have yet to go answered? We'll get into that and so much more on today's edition of Locked on LSU.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, thank you for making Locked on LSU your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And we are also on YouTube as well. So you can listen on the go. You can listen in your cars. You can plug your phone into your aux cord and listen there. You can also throw it up on your smart TV, throw it up on your smartphone, and watch the podcast on YouTube, Locked on LSU. My name is Caroline Fenton. I am your host, as I am every day. I graduated from LSU. I've been covering LSU sports since 2016, and I now host a sports talk radio show in Nashville, Tennessee. I also want to let y'all know that today's edition of Locked on LSU is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your 2023 goals. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. An exciting announcement coming out of LSU today. LSU has officially launched its first official NIL collective. Bayou Traditions has been announced today. So, I mean, so many different angles to start here, but I just want to start with, like what is it? So it's a collective. It's exactly what you have heard about with so many other schools across the SEC, so many schools across the country, and what a collective is basically a funneling of money to help fund NIL. We see at LSU Raising Cane's, for example, has NIL deals with several LSU athletes, not just on the football team, but across LSU sports. That is a deal and a contract written up between Raising Cane's and the individual athletes. That's separate from a collective. That is an NIL deal that is protected under the, its core of NIL of I want athlete XYZ ABC to sponsor, be a spokesperson for post social media posts of my business, of my company. What a collective is a way for boosters, a way for really anybody now to put money into NIL funds, to put money into NIL deals like you may have seen with Jaden Rashada, if it actually had gone through, like you've seen with Nico Amaliava, the quarterback from Tennessee, who just signed an $8 million NIL deal with Tennessee. So, it's all fair and fine. It's just LSU hasn't had that. So what's the point of this Bayou Traditions? What is the point of this collective for LSU? Well, first and foremost, it's to stay competitive in NIL. That's the most important thing. You look around college football in general, but specifically schools within the SEC, they've been operating with collectives really from the birth of NIL. What it's been, almost 2 years since then. 2 years this summer. And these collectives have been formed for years now. And it takes time to raise this money. Look at some of the quarterback deals. $8 million, $10 million, $13 million. It takes time to raise that money. And that's, depleting a good bit of your collective fund. For example, I look at Spire Sports, which is the NIL group at Tennessee. Their goal is to raise $25 million. Now, it's undisclosed exactly how much the Spire Collective has already raised, but they're signing $8 million quarterback deals. I look at Texas's collective that's already raised $10 million. And you look at Alabama's collective, High Tide Traditions. You look at Georgia's collective, Classic City Collective. You look at A&M with the fund. All of these schools within the SEC and that LSU is competitive with, whether it's on the field or in any other sport or whether it's in recruiting, all of these teams, all of these schools have already had established collectives. So that's one thing. That's the number one point, the number one most important thing about this NIL or about this collective rather is now LSU is in the conversation. Now LSU can start to become competitive with collectives around the country. And why is that important? Why do you want to stay competitive with collectives around the country? It's staying competitive with NIL. That's really the thing. LSU has been able to be competitive with NIL deals. You look at Raising Canes, I mentioned that one. Look at Gordon McKernan. Look at how many players on the football team represent or are represented by Gordon McKernan or represent Gordon McKernan, however you want to arrange that verbiage. Um, but there has not been one uniform funnel for NIL money. There has not been one group, one organized collection of this money that has been pooled in for NIL. Now, a second thing to clarify there too, if Gordon McKernan or Raising Canes or Walk Ons or whatever other local business in Baton Rouge wants to have NIL deals, they don't have to go through a collective. It's not any sort of red tape. It's not any sort of barrier between student athletes and potential NIL deals. It's exactly the opposite. It is simply a way to fund NIL deals. It consolidates all of the money. It makes all the money pooled together from donors one massive deal. And it also allows easy donations. That's kind of the different thing about this is it's a publicly facing collective because Go Enterprises exists. It hasn't been, a very popularly talked about thing as much as maybe some other collectives out there. Like, how many times have we heard the words Gator Collective over the past few weeks because of the Jaden Rashada situation? So it's different than that because Go Enterprises was a private fund that used, a small group of wealthy boosters, of private boosters that would contribute a lot of money. And so that's Go Enterprises. And I don't know what the future of Go Enterprises is. I don't know if Go Enterprises is still going to exist alongside Bayou Traditions. I don't know that, but that's what Go Enterprises was a small private group of donors who contribute a lot of money. The difference here is in Bayou Traditions, you can contribute to it like you would just like a GoFundMe. Like, you don't need to be some multimillionaire contributing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in NIL money each year. You can sign up for, $10 a month. You or me, we could go to Bayou Traditions and say, okay, I want to sign up for $10,000 a month. Put that on my credit card monthly. I want to sign up for $20 a month. Throw that on my credit card monthly. I want to give this one-time contribution of $500, whatever it might be. That's the difference here. Is that there have been private collectives and there have been private deals that have gone on between individual companies and individuals and their representation. This now opens up the NIL conversation and the NIL contributions to anyone. You or me, we can throw money into Bayou Traditions. We can throw money into these potential NIL deals. And I think that there's a very good side of that. There's a very positive side of that. I also do think that anytime you have more cooks in the kitchen and anytime you have more money that's contributed, there inherently will be problems. I want to get into why Bayou Traditions is so important, and I'll get into that coming up next. But before we do that, I want to tell you about our friends at FanDuel. So this year, the only app that you are going to need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel because it's America's number one sportsbook. And we are so, so, so excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one sportsbook in America. It's FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that is even better. They have so many great features that makes betting on sports fun and easy. So download the FanDuel app now so you can bet the Super Bowl 57 with a no sweat first bet. So you'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Talk about insurance. Shout out to FanDuel for that. They let you bet on everything from the money line to the point spreads to who will score a touchdown. There's always so many fun prop bets that you can put together in a parlay. If you think that the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl and you think that Jalen Hurts will score 2+ touchdowns. You can put those bets together in a parlay. So the FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid in your winnings instantly. It is so nice to get instantly paid. It's like that instant gratification. So let's say if you put money on Patrick Mahomes, 2+ rushing touchdowns, and he goes to the end zone for a second time in the Super Bowl, then you will see that money show up in your FanDuel app. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/locked on to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Well, thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every day. And Locked On is headed to the Senior Bowl. So get inside analysis from the hosts that covered the NFL's next generation in college and find out which NFL draft boards these players will be climbing all in one location. And of course, that's Locked On. So subscribe to the Locked On NFL Draft for nightly live shows from the Senior Bowl on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Make sure to check out those shows. We've got a bunch of my colleagues at Locked On who are in Mobile together. I have a little bit of FOMO, I'm not going to lie, but I will be bringing y'all Senior Bowl coverage throughout the week. We'll keep an eye on the LSU Tigers that are going to be suiting up in Mobile. Any good juicy tea, get some good piping hot gossip that comes out of Mobile. So shout out to our friends over at Locked On who will be contributing to our coverage. So, of course, we know now that LSU has unveiled its new collective, and it is Bayou Traditions. And Scott Woodward um, put together a video with the LSU creative group, with the LSU media group, who always does a great job. And he says Bayou Traditions is a new way that LSU fans can support the success of our championship athletic programs and our elite student athletes in the NIL era. Just as Tiger fans' philanthropic support of TAF continues to provide student athletes with a world-class experience, their additional support of Bayou Traditions will help us empower our student athletes to build their brands, support their families, and give back to their communities. And it's overall, inherently, it's a great thing. It's a good thing for the school. It's a good thing for this athletic department. And the most important reason why, the biggest reason why this is a big thing and a good thing for the athletic department is because everyone else is doing it. I understand that there are still people out there, and maybe you're one of them, that absolutely detests NIL, that wants to bring back, the old school way of doing things. And I say old school like it wasn't just like 2 years ago that NIL was not a thing. That wants to get back to that kind of college athletics of taking the pro style approach that we have seen now with NIL. They want to go back to that. I understand, but it's not going anywhere. So you either embrace it or you get eaten. That's really what it is. You either embrace it and you try to be the best and you try to climb your way to the top of NIL contributions and be on the positive side of NIL coverage, or you're going to lose out on recruits. Let's be completely honest. I know that there are still kids out there that only want to go to the best school possible, that only want to go where they can win a championship, that only want to go where they will be best set up to go to the NFL, to go to the MLB, to go to the NBA, to win championships, and to be the best athlete that they can be to take that next step. And money has nothing to do with it. But let's not be naive. There are so many kids, and I say kids meaning like recruits in high school, that will go wherever they get the most NIL money. And you know what? I don't blame them. And you shouldn't either. So if you're hearing all of this and you're rolling your eyes and you don't like that LSU has, come into this space, it's inherently a good thing, because you got to keep up. You absolutely have to keep up in this hyper competitive NIL environment. I think the other part of why it's so important, I touch a lot on the recruits and the young high school players. This is really important for retention. This is what I talked about when the transfer portal window opened originally. And of course, it'll reopen in the spring. But, when the original transfer portal opened at the end of the football season and fall, winter, was retention, was holding on to your players, was the fact that coaches now have such a unique challenge ahead of them of not just recruiting in high school, of not just recruiting those sophomores, juniors, seniors, but also recruiting your own locker room. Because there is nothing stopping a player from saying, hey, I'm going to enter the transfer portal and explore quote unquote free agency, test the open market, see what money is out there, and say, okay, like, just based off of NIL, either transferring or staying back is the best thing for me. There's nothing stopping those players. Whether you like that or not, you're entitled to your opinion. That's a realistic thing that happens. So it's not just bringing this collective in to pool money together to create these big time deals that look attractive for high school students to come to your team, a la Jaden Rashada in Florida, a la Nico Amaliava in Tennessee. And also, I've really been working on the pronunciation and I kind of been killing it today. Knock on wood. If I say it one more time and totally mess it up and totally butcher it. Anyways, now this is an opportunity to re recruit, is to remain an attractive place for these players to go. LSU has been very fortunate that they lost very few key players. Jack Besh transferred out. He wasn't a leading receiver by a mile. Walker Howard transfers out. You never want to lose your key developmental player as a 5-star quarterback. But when you look at the transfer, if the players who transferred away from LSU through the transfer portal, the NFL draft is a completely different story. You can't control that. But the players that left LSU really were not your core key guys. And LSU is very fortunate in that, because a lot of times there are so many programs that are plagued by the transfer portal each year because those players go elsewhere, whether that's for a coaching reason, whether that's for an NIL reason, whatever it might be. But now this ensures, as best to LSU's ability, that those players will not leave for NIL reasons. Sometimes players are just going to leave. That's what's going to happen. But this collective at least streamlines the funds to make it easier. That's really my biggest takeaway from all of this, is the union and the organization of a collective. Like I said, NIL deals could happen at any time with a business, corporation, with any sort of, a transaction of, I am, Caroline Fenton's crawfish stand and I want to be endorsed by, Jaden Daniels. That is a quid pro quo agreement. We sign a contract, we shake hands, great, move on, move forward. Now I can be not just Caroline Fenton's whatever, my business. I can be Caroline Fenton and contribute that way. And that, I think, is so important, that there is a one-stop shop, one place to go, whether it's me who it can contribute, X amount of dollars, $25 a month, whether that's big time booster that can contribute $25,000 a month, whatever that is. There is now one clear-cut, organized, centralized place to be in charge of that money, of the booster money, of the alumni money, of the fan money, rather than just the business transactions. But like I mentioned, with any business transaction, with any business that opens itself up to having quote unquote more cooks in the kitchen, which is exactly what Bayou Traditions is doing, there inherently are going to be questions or doubts or concerns. And I want to get into my questions, my doubts, my concerns about Bayou Traditions. It's a good thing. Overall, it's a very net positive thing. But anything that is net positive doesn't come with at least a few concerns. So I'll get into those coming up next. All right, Bayou Traditions is now announced. It is now LSU's official collective, and LSU is now keeping up with the rest of college football. You look at A&M's The Fund, which has been in existence basically as long as NIL has been in existence. You look at the Spire Sports Group at the University of Tennessee. That has been around and has been thriving for a very long time. It's a collective that has the highest fundraising goal of any other collective in the country, of 25 million. We've got the Classic City Collective at Georgia. We've got the High Tide Tradition at Alabama. Excuse me. I've got the Gator Collective at Florida, which is a little bit infamous at the moment. But there are so many collectives already out there, and now LSU is just now entering the conversation. LSU has just entered the chat. So LSU has a lot of working to do. LSU has a lot of ground that they need to gain in terms of NIL organization, in terms of collectives. LSU has embraced NIL from the very beginning. I don't want that to get misconstrued. It has embraced NIL from the very beginning. LSU, I believe, has done a very good job in terms of NIL education and providing student athletes with education and guidance and counseling in terms of money management, in terms of contract management, so on and so forth. But now the collective brings LSU into the modern day. Now this collective makes it so much more organized. But these are some questions that I have, or at least some concerns. First and foremost, I don't think that I can have any conversation about collectives or big time NIL deals without having Jaden Rashada in my mind. Because I mentioned on the podcast last week, and you can find that on your preferred podcast platform. You can find that on YouTube, of just how screwed Florida is, um, how screwed they are in terms of football because they don't have a quarterback, because they sold out to get Jaden Rashada. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it is what happened. Is Florida offered this deal because they wanted Jaden Rashada to be their quarterback of the future, because they don't have very many options in that quarterback room at Florida. So now they're left without a quarterback. Florida's reputation is, in question, I guess is the right word to say. Florida's collective reputation is tarnished, not ruined. I mean, it's the University of Florida. It's a great program. It's not going to be, it's not going to have a bad reputation forever, but it is tarnished. And if I'm a 16, 17-year-old kid looking around at Florida and I'm having conversations with the Gator Collective about my potential NIL deal, I'm a little bit nervous. So my question for Bayou Traditions, and really any collective, is what are you going to do to ensure that a Jaden Rashada-esque situation does not happen? And I hate that Jaden Rashada had to have become made an example of, but it's the truth. How are you going to ensure me that you have everything on your end of the deal taken care of? Because let's not forget, Gator Collective, Bayou Traditions, none of these collectives are school sanctioned. This is not an LSU organization. Yes, Scott Woodward is talking about it because he is part of it, but this is not LSU, University University of LSU. I just pulled a Len Fournette there. This is not Louisiana State University Bayou Traditions funded by LSU. It is not. This is completely independent. So I completely independent is maybe a little too far. It's independent of the university. At least it should be, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So what are you going to do, collective, organizer of the collective? What are you going to do, boosters, to ensure that we have all of our ducks in a row? Because if you don't, then the football team or the baseball team or the basketball team or the gymnastics team or the women's basketball team, they will inherently be hurt by it. So, what are the steps in line to ensure that that situation doesn't happen? Because Jaden Rashada and the Gator Collective and the University of Florida football team, they are all worse off because of this. So that's one thing, is what steps are in place? Who is going to be the governing body of Bayou Traditions? That's one thing I have. Another thing is there any kind of red tape that some donors may have to go through? Is there any sort of, system that has these checks in place? And what I mean by that is, if I am already a big time donor, if I already had, let's say if I'm already am doing NIL deals, let's say I'm Todd Graves with Raising Cane's, what is going to be more advantageous for me to get my brand out there, for me to develop these relationships with student athletes and to be in the NIL space? Is that for me to continue doing what I'm doing? Or is that to go through Bayou Traditions? Am I going to have to, go through more steps or checks or balances or whatever that might be? And I don't know what those would be, but I'm thinking, if we're looking at the success of Bayou Traditions, it's based off of money. Who's giving you money and who's giving you the most money? If you want to be competitive, well, Texas already has $10 million in their NIL fund. And so this collective is not going to be able to be competitive with the Texases, with the Texas A&Ms, with the Alabamas, with the Tennessees, with the Georgias of the world, whenever you're getting $10 donations from fans every single month. So where are your big money donors coming from? Are your big money donors going to continue doing what they're doing? Or are they going to Bayou Traditions? And I don't really know which is the better thing. I would say for the success of the collective, that would be for all funds to be pooled into this collective. So, how are you going to incentivize these big time donors that may already have NIL relationships to now turn and put their money into the collective rather than having their brand put out there? What is the incentive for these big time donors? And if there isn't one, then how successful can the collective be when that money from a Todd Graves is going to other NIL deals and not into the collective, if that makes sense? And that's really, that's I had a second or a third question written down here, and it's really kind of the same thing: is how will LSU continue to incentivize Bayou Traditions donations? It's really, and not just from the big time donors, but from your everyman, from the person who will contribute $100 every month, $500 every month, $1,000 every month. It's really easy now for people to be excited about this and to be like, woohoo, all right, let me put my credit card down. I'm going to donate money into the collective, however much money that might be. But what is going to be the incentive moving forward? If I donate to Bayou Traditions, what's in it for me? Because I can put my money into TAF. I can put my money into the Manship School of Mass Communication if I'd like. There are so many other places where I can see my money pay dividends almost immediately. How am I going to be incentivized to put money into Bayou Traditions? And it's maybe simply just, hey, we want to fight the good fight with you. We want to fight the good fight and be at the top of NIL. And that in and of itself is enough. But how is this going to be incentivized moving forward, both for the big time donors and really, for the everyman? And who maintains it? Who is maintaining the collective and who is maintaining these efforts? So I have a lot of questions. This is all inherently a very good thing. And LSU is finally stepping into the 21st century as far as NIL is concerned. But that's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen today. So for your second listen, check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton, both great guys, bring you everything that you need to know on and off the court. Plus, you can hear from big name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.